Let me pull up our notes here. All right. Give me a minute to get organized here. Okay. All right. Well, again, welcome. Welcome to session 10. And we're going to, what I want to do is, as I've been going through the notes and trying to, I want to try to make this as clear as possible, as helpful as possible. Unfortunately, none of us are know and speak the Koine Greek that the New Testament writers used. Unfortunately, we don't live at that time in history. So we learned other languages and came from other cultures. And so because of that, we have to study grammar in order to get closer to that original language. And so if we had been born 2,000 years ago, then we wouldn't have to do all of these grammar sessions together. We'd already know the language. So, but unfortunately, that's not the case. So we need to spend time on it. And we're going to be doing that today and the next several sessions to learn how language functions. And our focus, of course, will be English. And that's the translations we'll be using. But as I've said before, the Koine Greek, the grammar is very similar in many ways to English. And so what we learn about English grammar, much of that can apply to the Greek grammar. So then why don't we just study Greek together? Well, that would be a whole nother course. And so I think we'll just focus on trying to learn English, basics of English the best we can. And then that'll allow us to not only study the translations, but also too, there's so many tools available in English. So many Bible tools, commentaries, language helps, online resources. And so knowing English a little better, I think, will help you in using those tools to study the scripture. All right. And so I just want to encourage you to keep with this. I will continue recording these sessions so you can go back and look at those recordings, and I'll continue to provide you the notes so that hopefully that'll help a little bit. So today I wanted to take a step back and just look at, again, some of the basic building blocks. Again, our focus here is on what we call block diagramming the passage. That is, again, a visual picture of the text and how the various parts of the passage fit together. And so here's an example I've been showing you from Philemon. That's been our book we've been sort of studying for an example. And again, notice the various parts of this sentence in Philemon verses 4 and 5 are arranged in such a way that tell us how they're connected to other parts of the sentence. And so we're going to walk through the process of how to come up with this diagram, because diagramming is, in the study of epistles, it is, I believe, one of the most important steps in the process, because it is where we then focus on breaking down the language and the relationships between them. And that is where we can best identify the author's intended meaning, because that's what we're after. At the end of the day, we want to know what is it the author is saying, and he uses grammar and the rules of grammar in order to convey, in order to communicate his meaning. And so that's why we need to do this. And we're reminded by Paul that as he told Timothy in 2 Timothy 2:15, that we need to be diligent to show ourselves approved, being workmen, not ashamed, handling accurately the word of truth. And so that diligence requires us to make every effort to understand even the grammar. Okay. Now, as I've mentioned last week and the week before, epistles are made up of paragraphs. These are the units of thought that are connected together that that altogether communicate the author's purpose, what message he's trying to teach. And those paragraphs are then, we could take a paragraph and break it down into sentences. One or more sentences can make up a paragraph, a particular unit of thought the author will express in several sentences often. Those sentences are then, they have basic components, clauses and phrases. And we've been looking at those the last couple of weeks. Now, what I want to do is let me just show the example here of Philippians or Philemon verses 4 and 5. And again, here I've highlighted each of the phrases and clauses in this particular sentence, just to show you an example that in Philemon, the second paragraph is verses 4 to 7. That paragraph is broken into 3 sentences. One of those sentences is verses 4 and 5, and that sentence can be broken down into smaller parts, the phrases and clauses. Well, as it turns out, each phrase and clause itself can be broken down into smaller parts, and it's those smaller parts that I want to focus our attention on here just by way of review. Notice here, a clause is made up of the most basic building blocks in English are nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs. All right, those are the most basic building blocks, and from nouns and verbs and adjectives and adverbs we build clauses and phrases, and from those clauses and phrases we build sentences. From sentences we build paragraphs, and that's the sort of what I just said, but in reverse order. And so what I wanted to do today was sort of go back a few steps and just look at these basic building blocks, because it's very important that we understand what they are. And I know for some of you this will be just a simple review, but perhaps for others maybe it will help to give understanding when we use these different terms, nouns and verbs and adjectives, because we're going to talk about that a lot moving forward, because again, those are the basic, I call them building blocks of a phrase or a clause. Okay. And so